What if the United States had never dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? It's a question that reshapes not just the ending of World War II, but the very foundations of the modern world. In our timeline, the atomic bomb changed everything. From geopolitics to science, from morality to warfare. But what if that bomb had remained unused? Locked away in secrecy, its mushroom cloud never rising above a Japanese city. To answer that, we must first step back into the summer of 1945. The world was still trembling from 6 years of total war. Nazi Germany had surrendered in May, and attention had now shifted fully to the Pacific. The Japanese Empire was battered, its cities ravaged by conventional bombing, its navy shattered, and its people exhausted. Yet, the government showed no signs of surrendering unconditionally. The United States faced a dilemma. Victory seemed assured, but at what cost? The planned invasion of Japan, known as Operation Downfall, would require hundreds of thousands of American soldiers to storm the beaches of Kyushu and Honshu. U.S. estimates predicted between 250,000 to 1 million American casualties, and potentially millions more Japanese deaths. President Harry Truman, who had taken office after Franklin Roosevelt's death in April, was under enormous pressure to end the war quickly. But now, in this alternate timeline, Truman makes a different choice. Maybe it's the advice of scientists like Leo Szilard and Niels Bohr, warning of the moral consequences. Maybe it's the influence of military leaders like General Eisenhower, who believed Japan was already defeated. Maybe the political cost of unleashing such a weapon, especially on civilian populations, weighs too heavily. Regardless of the reasons, Truman refuses to authorize the use of atomic weapons. The bombs, Little Boy and Fat Man, remain in American arsenals, untested in combat. Hiroshima and Nagasaki survive, and the world steps onto a different historical path. Without the atomic bomb, the United States proceeds with Operation Downfall. The first phase, Operation Olympic, is launched in November 1945, targeting Kyushu. The Japanese, fully expecting an invasion, have prepared extensively. Over 10,000 kamikaze aircraft have been hidden in mountain caves. Millions of civilians are trained to resist with anything they can find: knives, bamboo spears, even boiling water. The country prepares for a final stand. The result is carnage. American troops land under relentless fire. Entire villages become battlefields, suicidal resistance, civilian... Meanwhile, in August 1945, just like in our timeline, the Soviet Union declares war on Japan. But in this version of history, the consequences are even more dramatic. The Red Army storms through Manchuria, annihilating Japanese forces in the region. Soviet troops cross into Korea, reaching the 38th parallel, and keep pushing south. Soon, they land in northern Hokkaido, the northernmost of Japan's main islands. The Soviets now have a direct presence on Japanese soil. By early 1946, American forces capture parts of southern Honshu after months of brutal fighting. Tokyo lies in ruins after sustained firebombing. The Japanese leadership, watching their country burn and facing collapse on two fronts, begins to fracture. Hardliners want to fight to the last man. Moderates, including Emperor Hirohito, begin seeking a way out. Eventually, after millions of deaths and unspeakable destruction, Japan surrenders. But this surrender comes with different terms. The emperor is stripped of most of his authority. Large parts of the country are under joint occupation, the United States in the south and the Soviet Union in the north. Just like Germany, Japan is divided. Northern Japan, including Hokkaido and possibly parts of northern Honshu, becomes a Soviet satellite. The Communist Party of Japan is elevated to power with Moscow's backing. Southern Japan, including Tokyo, Osaka, and Okinawa, becomes a US-occupied democratic republic. A fragile line divides the two, patrolled by soldiers and watched by spies. A new Cold War front is born in East Asia, not Korea, but Japan. This change has profound consequences. For one, the Cold War now has three major divided regions: Germany, Korea, and Japan. The Iron Curtain stretches from Berlin to Hokkaido. American and Soviet interests clash over trade, ideology, and influence. Proxy wars in Asia intensify. The Korean War still happens, but now tensions spill over into a Japanese peninsula split between capitalism and communism. The human cost of the invasion is staggering. Instead of the 200,000 deaths from the atomic bombings, this timeline sees millions of casualties. Cities like Kyoto, Sendai, and Fukuoka are leveled. Starvation sweeps the countryside. Civil war breaks out in rural regions as Japanese communists and nationalists fight for control. Disease spreads rapidly in bombed-out urban zones. American soldiers come home traumatized, wounded, or in coffins. Public opinion in the US grows weary of war. Back home, Truman faces intense political backlash. Critics accuse him of dragging out the war. His approval ratings plummet. The 1948 election becomes a referendum on the Japan invasion. The Republican Party, perhaps led by Thomas Dewey or General MacArthur, rises in popularity, vowing never to repeat such a cost. Without Hiroshima and Nagasaki as precedents, the psychological weight of nuclear warfare does not exist. The images, the melted buildings, the blackened shadows, the radiation sickness, are never burned into humanity's consciousness. The world fears the atomic bomb as a theoretical terror, not a proven one. The Soviet Union, still lacking a functional bomb in 1945, pushes harder to build one. The Cold War arms race accelerates, not because of deterrence, but because of uncertainty. Each side believes it must strike first if war breaks out. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction may never fully develop because the world hasn't seen nuclear destruction firsthand. This leads to a far more unstable balance of power. In fact, without the Hiroshima precedent, the first use of nuclear weapons in warfare might occur during a later conflict, perhaps in Korea or in a crisis over Berlin, or even during a US-China standoff over Taiwan. The result could be even more catastrophic. A nuclear escalation in the 1950s or 1960s involving multiple cities and possibly both superpowers might result in the deaths of tens of millions, a global nuclear nightmare. Culturally and politically, the absence of Hiroshima's shadow changes everything. Science fiction evolves differently. The environmental movement forms slower. Nuclear energy is seen as miraculous, not dangerous. There are fewer regulations. Countries like France, Israel, South Africa, and later Pakistan and India face less international scrutiny as they develop their own bombs. The nuclear club grows faster and riskier. Meanwhile, in divided Japan, two nations emerge. South Japan, backed by the US, receives economic aid similar to the Marshall Plan. Over the next few decades, it becomes a thriving capitalist democracy, much like South Korea. North Japan, under Soviet rule, mirrors North Korea, closed, authoritarian, and militarized. Tokyo, now in the south, is rebuilt with American funding, but cities in the north, Sapporo, Asahikawa, become communist strongholds. A wall, or DMZ, divides them. Families are separated. Propaganda fills the airwaves. Students on both sides grow up learning completely different versions of history. The two Japans become a focal point of Cold War propaganda, each claiming to be the true representative of Japanese culture and identity. Border skirmishes and espionage become common. In the 1980s, perhaps, a reunification crisis emerges, a Japanese version of the Berlin Wall moment. Or perhaps the division remains permanent, like it did in Korea. One strange side effect of this alternate path is that the moral question surrounding nuclear weapons remains unresolved. In our real timeline, the horror of Hiroshima sparked worldwide debate. Could such power ever be justified? Could it ever be used again? That conversation defined generations of diplomats, scientists, and citizens. In this timeline, that conversation never begins. The bomb is seen only as a military tool, not a symbol of human annihilation. Nuclear policy is written by generals, not philosophers. The possibility of a nuclear first strike becomes far more real. There are other consequences too. The United Nations, founded in 1945, may evolve differently. Without the urgency created by nuclear warfare, international disarmament talks happen later, or not at all. Trust between nations is weaker, espionage is more aggressive. Wars in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Africa are fought more recklessly. By the 21st century, the world might be filled with more nuclear-armed states, more regional conflicts, and fewer diplomatic breaks. A nuclear India-Pakistan war in the 2000s? A nuclear Iran in the 2010s? These scenarios become more likely in a world where the moral weight of Hiroshima never existed. And yet, the United States, in this alternate history, retains something else, its moral reputation. It is not the country that introduced nuclear weapons to the world through mass civilian deaths. It never had to answer for Hiroshima. Its international image, especially in post-colonial nations, may remain stronger. Its global leadership may be more trusted, or at least less feared, but this comes at an enormous cost. Millions more die in a prolonged war. Japan is divided. The nuclear age begins in confusion, not clarity. And future generations live under a cloud of uncertainty, always wondering, if the bomb is ever used, what will it truly do? In the end, we are left with a sobering conclusion. A world without Hiroshima is not necessarily a better world. It is simply a different one, bloodier, riskier, and more unpredictable. The atomic bomb, terrible as it was, may have ended one war to prevent another far greater one, but in this timeline, the lessons of history are learned too late, and at a much higher price.